Hey, it's Raminda, and thanks for joining me on Her Voice. Today we'll be speaking to Suhani Jalota, the founder and CEO of Mahila Foundation. It's an organisation that tackles period stigma in India, a place where periods are such a taboo that menstruating women have been banned from entering places of worship. Mahila Foundation was initially just a startup in a Mumbai slum. Her organisation employed women to make their own pads and then educate other women on the importance of menstrual hygiene. Suhani has managed to turn this organisation into a success in just a couple of years. She's met the Queen, who's awarded her with the Young Leader Award, and she's been featured on Vogue, Forbes, Glamour, and countless others. Hey, how's it going? How is everything?
Everything's going well. Actually, I just had been having a lot of busy days, and so I finally slept for like 10 hours last night. So I am extremely fresh.
Yeah, because you're currently doing a PhD at Stanford as well, whilst managing everything.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think I'm not able to go back to India also because of the whole like mess in the world and everything. But I think with Biden coming in, maybe it's becoming easier for me to travel back at some point soon. So that hopefully relieves a lot of the stress and time zone differences. And it's because of that I have to be up till like 2 or 3 a.m. and then get up for class at 8 and things like that. But otherwise, I think it should get fine soon.
But yeah, I reached out because I wanted to talk more about obviously the incredible work that you're doing for women in India and like your journey on getting there. And you've basically put the charity on the map. You became one of 7 charities to be chosen to benefit from donations marking the wedding between Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. That must be amazing.
Yeah, that was like a surreal experience. I don't know what to kind of, I mean, how it changed us massively at the time as well, where we had no credibility really going in as a small organization, very, very grassroots level. People trusted us, the community trusted us, but the world did not know that we existed or wanted to fund us or even wanted to partner with us. And this was really a monumental moment that people found out that we are a legit organization, that we may be a group of young girls or young women, an entirely grassroots based, a small organization, a new organization, but yet because we had a strong vision and mission and really a lot of integrity going into kind of work that we were doing, that we could be supported and that people should maybe support us. So it really did change a lot of people's perspective around us. And it was a huge confidence boost, I think, for the team themselves. That was like, oh, wow, like people really want to know more. People think that we do great work. Let's do better work now as well. So I think when we had 2 of the women from the slums travel with us to London and then to Windsor, we had a few donor meetings there too in London. And when they started talking to some of the wedding guests as well as just the other donors, they were just shocked at just how people were adulating us so much, and they were like, oh my god, you guys do such incredible work, you're working on such important topics. And the women had never directly heard it themselves. A lot of times it was through me. So when they directly heard it from people that are non-Indian, it was like, wow, like these people care too. So how is it that in India, and in India actually people don't, they're very indifferent to these problems, and oftentimes people in the slums are very sort of shoved away, and people, there's a lot of stigma against them and everything. So them being respected so much by foreigners was also such a big deal, and them wanting to fund us and everything. Overall, I think it was just a very surreal experience and really changed a lot of the trajectory for the organization in the years to come.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And like you said, that must have been such a massive confidence boost.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, what was the thing that inspired you to do something about this issue that India has with period shame, and why particularly the women in the urban slums?
Yeah. So lots of various reasons. I think came down to my experiences that when I was about 14, 15 years of age, I started working with the same woman with whom we founded the organization many years later. But we started now, it's been about 10 years ago, or now 10, 11 years ago. And with these women, essentially, I started to observe how they were being mentally, sexually harassed on ways to public toilets, even in looking at in the urban slums. And this was right next to my school. So I would go to school, Dhirubhai Ambani, and it's an international school. And right next door was the Dharavi slums, which are some of the largest slums in all of Asia. So you're sort of passing that. And in Mumbai is this city of stark inequality. And when I first started going to these slums, it was really, there was no agenda as such. It was mainly just trying to speak to the women, trying to understand a little bit more about their lives. And when I became like, more just closer to them, I just was shocked constantly about how the women were not protesting in their own communities somehow or in their own households, because they'd had so much of injustice done to them, from them being married off at the age of 12, and then having to face like an abusive husband who was beating them up almost every day, to him being an alcoholic and her having to fund for his alcohol as well, to like all kinds of issues. And just women were just not speaking up. And we realized that this is just such an ingrained, complicated gender norm issue in society that we can't just go in and preach people against it. There's no way that that's going to change behavior. So what could really change behavior? And over the years, I think we spent about 4 to 5 years just with, again, just trying to understand how are women thinking, how do societies work, how are men and households approaching various issues around gender. And we realized that there are actually quite tangible ways of tackling this issue, especially if money comes in the picture. And if a product like, say, sanitary napkins speak money, so they bring in income in the household, men are also compelled to talk about the issue. And it starts to break the taboo and stigma around everything that's related to what a woman stands for, and not just menstrual health, by us focusing on a very tangible issue like menstrual health that has very, very, very clear products associated with it that can start conversations at the doorstep. And because these were products that were anyway, women did not have clear access to, direct access to, without facing stigma when they go to a male shopkeeper in a mom and pop type store and then they buy the pads from there. It's a very confusing, stigmatizing process, and women try to avoid that anyway. So what if we only have women across this whole supply chain channel, providing women with jobs and employment, bringing money at home, and at the same time making sure that women are prioritizing their health and their bodies and knowing how to speak about it without having any hesitation or stigma. So I think there was all across all of these different fronts, over time we realized that the core of what we really stood for and we should stand for as an organization, if we were to ever start anything to support women, would be to provide women with agency so that they understand the decision-making power that they themselves have. And how do we really do that? Was, let's start with a very tangible topic that women can comprehend a little bit more easily than a topic, say, like domestic violence or sexual assault, which requires a certain amount of community trust already being built. So actually, those are the kinds of topics that we're going into now as we start to have formed these relations over the last 5 years of the organization. But that's really where we stem from, and that's really why the focus of menstrual health came in. And when researching more and more, we started to realize that actually there are more than 300 million women. That's more than the population of the United States who are actually don't have access to proper menstrual hygiene and health products and services. And in fact, even more, I don't have adequate awareness around the accurate information around menstrual health at all. And in fact, it was shocking to see how many women, in fact, I think more than 80% of the women that we were working with had never worn an undergarment before. Even. And so like forget sanitary napkins, but even when they would wear, so only during their periods would they ever wear underwears so that they could add a sanitary napkin to it. And we did have a good proportion of women using sanitary napkins, but they were using it as one sanitary napkin they'd use for 24 hours in a day to try to cut down on how many napkins they had to use. They didn't understand the disadvantages of not using it well. They did not understand the benefits of changing it constantly, or even for not using it in combination with cloth. So many of them only used pads when they went outside the house. Then they used cloth when they were inside, and then that cloth, because they didn't want to make it obvious to anybody else that they were on their periods, they hid the cloth below their beds, and then that you reuse that same cloth when it is damp again, which could be a huge breeding ground for a lot of bacterial infections. And that's what would cause a lot of the inflammation and then future problems as well for reproductive tract infections. So, and these are not things that you can directly attribute to proper or improper menstrual health or product use, which is why it's very difficult to tell people that, you did this, which is why this is exactly what caused this. It's often very difficult anyway for health conditions to be attributed to a single cause. And so because of that, it's been very, very challenging to work on health as an indicator for improvement changes in menstrual health as well. But that's why we've to also broaden our scope of impact when we're thinking about social impact, and really our conversations happening about this. Are women really speaking up? And are they really experiencing the level of agency and decision-making power that we'd intended to start off with as a result of improved menstrual health?
So just a bit of background for those that don't know. India is made out of loads of different cultures and religions and ethnicities, and so are the taboos that come with those cultures. They're also very different. In order to tackle period shame in those individual cultures, you have to do so individually.
Again, all come with different prejudices around and different norms and traditions around what they think usage of sanitary napkins entails, disposal of the napkins as well. They all have different myths associated with each item, and also what women during their periods can or cannot do, and how impure they may be. So when we started to first hold our education sessions in communities with women of different religions, we were having women of certain religions start protesting, in fact, even, and being like, no, you don't understand what's in the Quran, or you don't understand what we are taught in church or something. And, if you are not aware about these things, then you cannot be teaching us about something that's totally against our norm. And we started to realize just how important it was for us to have trainers of the same religion that we were preaching to. And maybe, in fact, we might need to have some segregation of religion at the beginning when we're first providing information to people. And that actually did seem to have a lot of benefits. And then we started even holding sessions in temples for Hindu women. And we tried to break the whole taboo around something is going to happen to us if we hold a session in the temple. We'll be damned forever or something. But now that we've held a session in the temple and we've had lots of women come in, and this is the first time they've ever come to their temple to talk about this issue or even come in during their periods, now it's suddenly they realize that, okay, it's possible. And nothing happened to us. There wasn't a bomb. There wasn't an explosion. There was no earthquake. Like, everything is fine. So now if that is okay, then maybe I can come back again. And maybe I don't have to be so vehemently saying no to my daughter if she wants to come to the temple, and not stopping her when she has her periods as well. So I think that we've really tried to be blatant about it in some ways and tried to be more inexplicit about it in others. So for instance, our pad packets, women feel very shy carrying the pad packets out in public, and definitely not near a religious institution. We then made the pad packet, we designed the pad packet so that it looks more like a bread packet and not really a sanitary napkin packet. So women feel more comfortable just carrying that around with them. So in that kind of a scenario where we see that women are comfortable carrying it, they just feel more comfortable now carrying it anywhere with them. And now they won't necessarily keep it out of their purse if they're going to a temple. They wouldn't necessarily remember that this is something different in their lives. And that's really what the whole point of all of this is that we want to normalize everything so it just becomes a very seamless process. And it's not anything that's causing differences or something that they have to maintain during their period somehow. So I think we've been trying it across different routes. It's very difficult to work with religious leaders on this. And that is, I think, still a huge upward challenge for us and for most organizations trying to break the taboo around the topic too. The traditions really rest on making sure that a woman is oppressed. And most of the religious leaders happen to be men who want to keep the women oppressed continuously. So the moment that something comes up that might give women a little bit more power or a little bit more voice, suddenly their position is extremely threatened. So there are too many vested interests in keeping the women the way they are. Even if you know that that's actually wrong, you want to do it that way. It's very similar to how the political system works, I think, in so many ways. So that's why I think it's extremely challenging, because it's not about convincing them on the issue. They're already convinced on the issue in a large part. It's convincing them that it's okay to give up power, which is extremely challenging to do.
So I'm guessing a lot of women benefited from your organisation, and it must have really helped to change and turn around a lot of individual situations. Was there anyone in particular that stood out to you the most?
Yeah, so we have two different types of beneficiaries. One type of beneficiary is women that we employ ourselves. They all come from the slum community where we work, and the second is women that we have impacted at the doorstep, or through our various programs outside of working at the organization directly. So we've had some incredible revolutionary sort of stories as well, especially the women that directly work with us. For instance, a girl, Uzma, she came to us when she was 17. She came with her mother. Her mother was crying. Her husband, basically, or Uzma's father, had basically uh, been paralyzed just last week, like the week before that she'd come to us. This was now 5 years ago, and the mother couldn't pay for the bills. The mother was also heavily asthmatic, had never really worked before. She could not find employment. The father had no employment and was in fact just building up health bills. Her elder brother, Uzma's elder brother, had never worked before. He had no educational degree. Uzma had never gone to school either. And the eldest sister in the family was married to a guy who left her because she gave birth to a daughter. So basically, now there was an entire family. They're not own a house. They were living on rent, but they didn't have enough money to pay rent either. And when she came to us from a very heavy Muslim household, she was not allowed to remove her burqa either. She was fully covering her face, and she wouldn't even say her name to us openly. So this is just to give you a context of the type of girls, and many of the girls that work with us are almost like very similar in background as well. But in Uzma's case, she was just really young, and we don't take girls before the age of 18. I think she came to us when she was 16, actually, and we were like, no, you have to go to school. We'll fund actually for some of your schooling, and then you come to us after that. But she was like, no, Didi, I've never gone to school. I'd have to start from very like early on right now, and I just need money at home. And in fact, she would not say herself. It was her mom who was saying all of this to us because she was just so scared to speak up. And she'd never had friends before. So when she came, it was very difficult initially knowing that she might not actually have much scope for growth because she just seemed so hesitant. But then we just started to have her observe what we were doing. She just came to our office for the first month or so, observing and seeing a place where other women were not wearing burqas, were not so contained, and actually had lives of their own, and were doing things that was unimaginable in their community. And it's located within that same community, so it's possible to change from within. And when you start seeing that, she started to suddenly open up, and she was like, okay, I can actually have friends here. And she found two other girls that we work with. They're also young, on the younger side. And they became like best friends. And then the manager in the office started working with her very closely on getting her more and more involved in production. And then actually getting her more involved in sales as well, that she was actually going door to door, providing these products and talking to strangers, which she had never done in her entire life before, about the pad products. And then we hold life skills sessions and English classes for all of our women. And she was a part of those English classes as well. She learned how to type the text in English. She learned how to write in English. And then she had earned enough money through the organization to not just pay rent every month, but also buy herself a smartphone and her brother a smartphone as well. And then she started texting her friends in English on all social media channels and everything. And people were just surprised that it's the same Uzma. And then she even started taking part in our pad parades, which were essentially on the streets on microphones, talking about how period blood is not bad blood, now totally open, talking about everything that she had always wanted to, but had no idea that she ever had the voice to do so. So I think in her case, it was really a very transformative change, happened over a year. It didn't even take as much time because she was still young, and I think her thoughts are still kind of malleable. And now she's one of our highest sellers. She's the media face of a lot of our programming, where she's really talking about her story as well. And in fact has encouraged so many of the other girls in the organization to come up and share theirs as well.
Oh, that sounds amazing. It's like she's become like the ambassador for your brand in a way.
Totally has. And her mom keeps saying that, Uzma is going to go so far at Myna, and she's going to take Myna very far. And we're all like, yes, that we would love that. And Uzma wants to see that happen to many more other girls in her community as well. So she's really become a role model.
Oh, that's amazing. And talking about parents, like I'm sure your parents must be very proud of you setting this up. How did they react when you first decided to create this organization?
At first, they thought that I was just crazy, and so Myna was actually like the sixth idea that I was working on, and it was like over time with the same woman on different things, and so they really thought that this is just one of those ideas. They're going to do a project and then like that'll be it. And they didn't realize how serious I was when I started being like, okay, no, we actually have machinery now. Actually, we have like 6 offices now. And then now we have all of this. And then they're like, whoa, okay, what is actually happening? And then they actually wanted to start getting involved to make sure that I actually knew what I was doing. And then they would come down and then see. And in fact, they've supported me so much then over time. Once they actually realized this was something legitimate that we were doing. My mom is now, because I'm in the US, my mom and dad are both still in Mumbai. So mom still gets involved. She's in all of our team meetings as well every week now, just to keep a tab of everything, to make sure that everything is going smoothly. She's a finance IT person, and she's also a fashion designer. So she really helps with bringing in that finance expertise into the organization. So really, she oversees our finance manager and their work as well. And then with a fashion designing background, she actually has been designing a lot of our cloth products that we make out of Myna boutique, that we sell in terms of pad pouches, laptop bags, and so on, that we give on, we sell online to be able to subsidize our pad sales. So there are actually ways in which they get really involved. And I mean, it's really nice to see. Even my grandma, for instance, she's sitting in Lucknow in North India, and she provides a lot of support on designing various products as well for the Myna boutique. When she comes down, she's really engaged, as well as the organization. So it's really nice to see a lot of family support for this now, especially because women in our family, I think we come from North India, they've generally been very oppressed. They've generally not been able to have their own careers. My mom is the first and probably the only woman, I think, in our entire family who has a career, as a job, and she works somewhere outside, but nobody else really has. So I think women have really started to get engaged in our family, and they've started to question and open up on the traditions that they've experienced because of all that they see at Myna doing and happening.
So, my final question to you is that do you see India's attitudes to periods changing?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So over time, we've seen a lot more awareness in general about the topic, from the Prime Minister talking about this, even in the Independence Day speech, to Padman, a Bollywood movie being released about it. I think there's been a lot more conversation in general discourse. And also this period leave policy that came up in India, where Zomato was giving all of its all of its employees who menstruate 10 days leave in a year, including trans people. So I think there's been a lot of just public discussion. Now, whether the public discussion is really resulting in an improved outcomes is a whole different discussion. And I think that's where I am slightly frustrated and contentious about, that I don't think that that's really happening. And in fact, it's giving people a false promise that this issue has been solved because we're talking more about it now. And that is very, very, very far from the truth. So I think in the next 10 years, if we really had to accelerate this progress, what one needs to do is really focus on building the infrastructure and the systematic support that women need to support them during this time. So whether that is actually building more infrastructure in terms of having public toilets with trash cans that have lids, with water and soap, and having a very clear destigmatization of this topic at chemist shops. Don't wrap pad packets in layers of newspaper and put them in a black bag, stigmatizing the woman and making her think that this is something wrong. Give it to her openly, stop feeling shy, and just like talk about this as if it is like a band-aid, or just as if it is anything else. I think we need to have just more normal conversation and not glamorizing the topic. It is a very messy topic. So I think understanding that period poverty is a real issue, and it's more nuanced than just providing pad packets to women, would really take us much further. Because now it's not about getting the pad packet to the woman. It's about making sure that the woman understands the benefits, knows why she's using it, knows why periods even happen to her, knows that she's not impure. And if she's empowered enough to then make decisions about her own menstrual health, then we don't need to be focusing on pad access anymore. She will make sure that she gets the pad access. And then that's it. Like that's the level at which we need to be at. But that's a lot more challenging than just giving her the pad without her realizing what it is and why it's important. So I think that the discourse is there. Thank God it's there, but we just need it to be in the right direction, which is more around the usage, the benefits, the education, the awareness, the advocacy, rather than providing the pad access. In which case, there's a lot of vested interest for a lot of business holders to do that, which is why I think the government has been stressing on that. And it's also an easy short-term band-aid solution. Thank you so much, Amanda. This was really great, and really hope that you have a lot of success with this show as well.
Thanks again for tuning in. If you want to help Suhani and her organisation, you can go on their website and donate at mynamahila.com. You can also vote for them for an award they're entering, which would help them reach 250,000 more women in India. More information is available on our social media. Follow us on Twitter, it's Her Voice PC. Thanks again and speak soon.